Bill C-11 ultimately will do two things. It will censor what we can see online, because the government will dictate the content that is there. And secondly, Bill C-11 will determine the extent to which creators are allowed to thrive. In other words, the government will go through and pick winners and losers. Some content creators will be deemed Canadian enough, and other content creators just won't make the cut. If they make the cut, they'll be promoted. If they don't make the cut, they won't be promoted. There is nothing progressive about censorship. Nothing. There is nothing progressive about censorship. And that is exactly what this bill is about. It is about censoring Canadians and what they can see, what they can hear, and what they can post online. And it's about censoring artists and whether or not they have access to an audience and to what extent that access is granted. When speaking about this bill, Margaret Atwood, who is an extremely well-known Canadian author, didn't mince her words. She was pretty direct about it. She called it, quote, creeping totalitarianism. Pretty damning. Why? Not my words. Margaret Atwood. Creeping totalitarianism. Now, I think in order to understand this a little bit more, we actually have to go back to the origin. We have to go back to the origin of this bill. We have to talk about the motive, because I think that's very important for Canadians to understand. Now, this bill we know started out as Bill C-10 in 2020, and it's gone through a number of iterations since then, but the worst parts of this bill remain intact. Right. In fact, one could argue that it's actually worse than ever, in part because it's had opportunity to change. The government had opportunity to hear from witnesses. The government had opportunity to hear from experts, and the government made a decision to ignore those voices. The government has had opportunity to respond to the Senate amendments, which were very thoughtful, very reasonable. And the government is making the decision to disregard most of those amendments. So one could argue then that the government is actually wanting this bill to be as egregious as possible. So what brought us here anyways?